Welcome to Doesn't Matter. In debatably the best time in human history, probably not debatably to be honest, less violence, far less poverty, far more opportunity. Humans are, by every metric, better off now than they've ever been before. And that's not to say there's some significant challenges on the horizon, and there are. But nonetheless, we're doing exceptionally well. And yet many of the common metrics which we've been using for about 4 or 5 decades now for happiness show a decline in overall happiness for most demographics in the population. And that doesn't seem to make any sense to me. We have more reasons to be happy. We are existentially safer. We have more opportunity, more pleasure, more leisure, and yet we are measurably less happy than we have been for a very long time. So in light of that, it makes me wonder if perhaps, though we may be able to measure happiness to some degree, we have been misled in working out or assuming what makes us happy. So perhaps the discontinuity between the conditions that we live in, which are vastly superior to any other time in human history, and the way we feel is not as anomalous as we might think if we assume that we have made an assumption, a false one, about what it is that makes us happy. Perhaps instinctively, through innovation and technology, we have drawn close to that which is easy and convenient and comfortable. And certainly elements of those things can sometimes make us happier. But do they intrinsically make us happier? It seems to be not the case. I think we have made a fundamental misstep in assuming what makes us happy. We assume that peace, as in peaceful times, plenty, endless opportunity, endless choice, and affluent economics will make us happy. And those things certainly make the quality of life potentially much better. That's true. But is it possible that humans can only be happy when certain more subtle, nuanced metrics are met, ones that we're not measuring for, we're not testing for? Social connection is one of the big ones. Social connection is a huge one. It determines the length of our life, how sick we get or don't. When we get dementia, if we do get dementia, and when we get it, how late we get it in life. All-cause mortality drops when we have more social connection and better relationships. So it's, to me, fairly reliable that if you look at the relationship metrics in society, we have poorer heuristics for that. We have less community by far. We have staggering family dissolution, the dissolution of the family, the shrinking of the family due to population drops and people just having less and less children, which contributes to what's now emerging as the child gap or the birth gap. Where our relational health as a society is degrading. Even while other metrics of health have improved, we live longer, we're somewhat fatter, and that's not a good thing, but we live longer and we're dealing with disease better than we used to, and we're making massive inroads into aging, but our mental health has gotten worse, much worse, by even recent metrics over the last 20 years or so compared to the previous 30 or 40 years. So I think that we are not counting the impact of losing community, shrinking families down, and then dividing those families, commodifying people, turning each other into products or services that may be used and partaken of and then disposed of. And that's definitely happened. I mean, anyone who's being objective about this can see that we are in a highly commodified crony capitalist culture, where everyone is reduced to their commodified value in the market. And we can't help, it doesn't matter how much of a lefty you are or how much of a right-wing liberal you are, an egalitarian you are. I think it's very difficult to escape the permeating malaise of commercial commodification and its impact on everything, including modern ideology and postmodernist attitudes that permeate and have thoroughly infused our institutions and most of our corporate structures as well. We are products. Whether we like to admit it or not, we are. And we see each other as opportunities to receive services, to find satisfaction with one another. And as that becomes more dominant over our opportunities to provide, to serve, the yin to the yang, we're growing less happy. And I guess the argument I would like to make is that we need a cultural shift away from theology and ideology and towards the robust discussion of ideas and the detribalizing of conceptualization and ways of thinking. We need to be able to play with ideas and argue over them robustly but civilly, and without assuming diametric camps, because that kind of binarism is extremely dangerous and unhealthy for society. But we also need to consider whether the commercial focus that has become dominant in our society and dominant in our culture has poisoned us to some degree, and I would stake my life on it. It has. We have stopped seeing each other as unique, as precious, and we have more and more seen each other as sources of satisfaction, or sources of, because there's a commensurate relationship there. A person that you see as a source of satisfaction will eventually become a source of dissatisfaction. And then it's very easy for that relationship to swing one way or the other. Very easily. Pardon me. It's very easy for that to swing one way or the other and fall out of balance. When we have these binarisms, these simplistic binarisms, dualities in the way we see each other, and we don't respect the complexity of both our lives and each other, and we don't see each other as unique reflections of the universe in motion, we fall into deadly traps of assumption and conflation. And when you look at the world today, which should be in far greater harmony than it is, and certainly in far greater societal and relational happiness, it isn't. And that contradiction is glaring, and it's easily lost in all the pleasure that we can have, the hedonism. But they're just distractions. Why are relationships so poor today? Why do people have less friendships? Why are people today having less sex in this liberated, sexually promiscuous age? Why, on average, people are having less sex, less affection, less friends, less connection? What is happening? Colossal divorce rates that get worse as we get older instead of stabilizing. They don't stabilize now. until the relationship has lasted between 25 and 35 years, which is unheard of in previous eras. What exactly is happening? It seems like societally we're devolving and dissolving. And I do think that it's because our focus has been on increasingly treating each other like products, treating each other like services of satisfaction, and we have forgotten how to serve. And it isn't possible in society or in relationships that make up society for one person to serve. Both must serve each other. And it seems to me increasingly that people are trying to get the other to serve them without themselves serving, without themselves being what they ask for. And that is a terrible, terrible trap. It's a unsustainable cycle of malevolence that people are unintentionally inflicting on each other and on society as a whole. So to me, it seems that we need to think much more carefully about how we look at each other. That the source of our unhappiness, our general broad scale unhappiness, is a reliance on hedonism and pleasure instead of meaning and joy, but just simple and easy pleasure, service-based, goods-based lives instead of meaning-based lives, and lives that seek to be served rather than to serve. And balance. Life is balance. You should be served by those who love you, and you should serve them, both. When imbalance comes into that situation, disaster is the only thing that can ensue. So let's all try, perhaps, to serve each other a little better and cross our fingers that, because that's all you can do, that those that we serve us in return. Obviously, there's a point where you can, you don't keep pouring water into a black hole, bottomless pit. But reciprocity is the key to success in that area. But sometimes by serving others and being loving and persistent, you can engender the same results in others, passing it forward. So let's try to do that and see if we can dig our way out of this unhappiness trap that we've found ourselves in. Us.